Okay, let's begin. I'm going to start by asking you a couple of test questions just to establish a baseline.
We'll start with an easy one.
Caught out.
Exposed as a lie in the media.
That's how you are calling him a liar.
Well, you can pick the name.
This was saying black is white.
Now go ahead and say something that is true so we can properly calibrate the machine.
The Polygraph.
Julia Banks joins us. She is the Liberal MP for the seat of Chisholm. Julia, welcome. How are you going?
Thanks, Raf. Great to be on your show.
Your suburbs and your electorate, just so people, they might not be aware that you are their local member. What are the suburbs you cover?
So Mount Waverley, Burwood, Box Hill, Mont Albert, Surrey Hills.
Don't have to get through them all, but people get an idea. That's
Oakley,
okay. People get an
Clayton.
idea. And Claire O'Neill is with us as well. She is the Labor Party member for the seat of Hotham. She's Shadow Minister for Justice as well. Claire, welcome. Your suburbs?
Thanks, Raf. Great to be here with you, Julia. And Julia and I are actually neighbours in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne. So I have East Bentley all the way across to Springvale, down to Dingley Village, and across to Cheltenham, Hyatt, Moorabbin.
So do you get a little bit of the new freeway proposed by Daniel Andrews?
I will, yeah.
You get a little bit of that. So it goes out of your electorate, presumably.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, 1300 222 774 is the phone number. I mentioned all the list of acronyms. The Energy Minister, Josh Frydenberg, is going to try and knock heads together next week. See if you can get the states and the territories to agree. Julia Banks, can I start with you? I mentioned the clean energy target, Alan Finkel's idea, the chief scientist. He consulted with hundreds of people, took months to do it. Government said no to the clean energy target. The NEG, love all these acronyms, the National Energy Guarantee. It comes from a group called the Energy Security Board. They met once before this idea was adopted by the government. Why did you back an idea from a group of people that only met once rather than an idea from a chief scientist who'd met with hundreds of people over many months?
Well, I wouldn't simplify it like that, Ralph. There's been, as you said in your intro, significant consultation in relation to this. The thing about the National Energy Guarantee is that it's not just an acronym. It is a sensible and pragmatic solution, and it is drawn the line in the sand where basically the future of energy policy has to be determined by the public's best interest, and not by ideology, and that's what underpins the National Energy Guarantee.
The critique would be it is ideology because you got given a great solution by the chief scientist who went around the world, went around the country, spoke to everyone, spent months on it, and you actually handed an idea to the Energy Security Board, who are a group of people who control the grid effectively, but they met once and just gave you the idea you wanted to hear.
Yeah, well, look, as we heard from Josh Frydenberg today at the National Press Club, it's not just about coal. It's a level playing field. It's about rationalising all of our energy assets. It's not just about renewables. We're not the renewables party. We're not the coal party. Everything is in the mix, and it's about a balanced, enduring, market-based course of action. And the two words that I believe underpin the National Energy Guarantee are reliability and affordability. So you can't have one without the other. If you're looking at the public's best interest, if you look at one without the other, so if you look at renewables, if you go down the sort of Labor Greens ideology path of focusing just on renewables and unrealistic renewables targets, then you're not acting in the public's best interest because you won't have reliability. What you will have is what they had under the Labor government in South Australia in relation to unreliability and the lights going off.
I want to ask just a bit of, I guess I'll call this homework, Julia Banks. I'm not sure if the Prime Minister and the Home Affairs Minister are disagreeing or not. There's a story that they had a discussion last year that Peter Dutton said, hey, you know what? Let's reduce immigration numbers. The Prime Minister said that story in front page of The Australian was basically all made up and rubbish.
Completely untrue. It is false. No, it is completely untrue. It is completely untrue. The claim in the article is false. Full stop. Okay? Full stop. It's false.
I'll give him this. There's no ambiguity about what he's saying about the story. Now, Peter Dutton both agreed with the Prime Minister, but to my ears, he confirms the story that he did discuss changing how many people come in on the immigration intake, that he did discuss that with senior colleagues. Have a listen.
Of course, there are discussions that take place around what the figure should be, the benefits of different aspects of migration. There's obviously a debate about congestion and about housing affordability, and the government's alive to all of those concerns. The point that I'm making is I'm not going into detail of what was said at what meeting on what date. I've seen the comments of the Prime Minister yesterday, and I fully endorse those.
They having a disagreement or not, Julia Banks? Because every single journalist in Canberra thinks they are having a disagreement.
They're not having a disagreement, and that's what Minister Dutton said today. Look, basically, and as the Prime Minister said yesterday, very clearly, unequivocally, it wasn't true. This has never been put to Cabinet. And,
that doesn't
and it
mean
hasn't been a
true.
Cabinet discussion. No. I mean,
having a chat amongst Cabinet officers about reducing the intake doesn't have to happen in Cabinet.
Ministers canvass different ideas and have different discussions all the time. But for an article to imply that this has been put to Cabinet and rejected by Cabinet, that is not true. So
any leadership trouble at the moment in the Liberal Party?
There's not at all.
None?
None at all.
None.
From our let me just address that. Raf, in terms of also what Claire said previously. Unlike the Labor Party, the Liberal Party don't have a gag order on its backbenchers. We don't have a gag order, and we're not expelled from the party if we speak our mind or if we happen to disagree in relation to a policy. You know, it is the party of free speech, and we do not have that sort of gag order. So backbenchers are entitled to say what they like. From
there
our
were
perspective,
3 ministers on Monday and Tuesday saying they might be interested in leaving the party. That only happens in the context of leadership instability.
Not at all. No. Look, our Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, led us to victory in the 2016 election, and I have no doubt whatsoever that he will lead us to victory again in 2019. He has the support of the party room. He promised two substantive things. We've all done to death the 30 news polls, but he promised 2 substantive things, and that is economic leadership and a cabinet-style government. Now, I'm a backbencher, and he runs a cabinet-style, a consultative style with me as a backbencher and with my other fellow backbenchers. That is the way we operate. We are entitled to speak our minds, and we do that.
Claire O'Neill, I don't like asking Labor Party people about Liberal Party issues, but a quick 10-second response.
Please get on with governing the country.
Okay, she was brief.
And look, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
We'll get to
record job growth.
We'll get to more questions about how we should or should not be governing the country in just.
You're with Raf.
The Liberal Party's Julia Banks is with me in the studio. So too is the Labor Party's Claire O'Neill. Can I ask you both about Vanuatu? There's a great tweet from a Fairfax journo saying this: wharves, roads, prime ministerial offices, convention centres, musical instruments for police, table tennis coaches. China is buying influence in Vanuatu. It's a pretty extensive list, actually, from wharves through the table tennis coaches. I just want to play you both. Sue called us. She lives both here, and she's obviously got property in Vanuatu, and it looks like China's military visits often. Have a listen.
I have land next to the supposed base. The Chinese bought the land 2 years ago, and there are warships there now, and there are submarines now. They come and go. Why they would need to pick up fuel, I don't know, because they only go to the base. There isn't anything at the base. It's a supposedly pineapple coconut plantation.
Claire O'Neill, I'll start with you. Actually, because Bob Carr, former Labor Premier, he said that there's a bit of paranoia in Australia about China. So that's an important question to ponder, whether or not we're being paranoid about China. Vanuatu is less than 2,000 kilometres from the coast. Should we be worried about a military base there?
I think we need to probably have a better quality conversation about what's going on in our region, and the Vanuatu report is a part of that. So we have got a new superpower in our region. And in my lifetime, we've benefited from really what has been decades of a relatively peaceful environment in the Asia Pacific. But I think there's pretty good reason to believe that that's going to change over that next generation. And Australia does need to think about how it engages with our region. So, with Vanuatu, the example that's been put forward today, China owns about half of Vanuatu's foreign debt. Like, they are a major player on this island country. They are, if the reports are true and they are planning to put a military base on Vanuatu, that will be the second Chinese military base outside of China. So there's
After
only one other
Djibouti,
after
yeah.
Djibouti. So this is pretty serious. So this is an island that's 2,000 kilometres away, deep in the South Pacific. So when you add that to the fact that we've got these issues in the South China Sea, and of course as well, America being a bit unclear about what its plans are to engage with the Asia Pacific. So it is a good opportunity, I think, for us as Australians to just think about how we're going to engage with our region. And, foreign aid is a big part of that we probably
I'll get on
not,
to foreign
not
aid. Are we
talking
being
about enough.
paranoid or are we being sensible? Because there's a lot of reporting about donations,
Yep.
both sides.
Look, I just believe whenever we're talking about facts, we're not being paranoid. And the facts are that we've got China that's starting to get quite
Flex its
big,
muscle.
quite powerful, and it's doing some things in the region that are, of course, going to change how we do things in the region.
Julia Banks, how should we think about China?
Well, I certainly agree with Claire in relation to talking about facts. And indeed, one of the key priorities of our white paper, a foreign policy white paper, is underpinned by the maintenance of peace and stability in the Pacific. That's of utmost importance to us in Australia.
Are we less stable if China's got a military base in Vanuatu?
Look, from our point of view, first of all, in that allegation, if you like, that they're supporting a military base in Vanuatu. The government of Vanuatu has confirmed that there's no such proposal on the table. He's assured, and the Prime Minister has confirmed that, and the Foreign Minister has confirmed that. We have to remember that Vanuatu is a sovereign nation, and its foreign and defence relationships are a matter for Vanuatu. But from our perspective,
But it's also a tiny nation, isn't it? And what
it is
we say
indeed. Yeah.
to Vanuatu matters even more than, say, what a country like Britain and America says to us. They're tiny.
Well, I think in the Pacific region matters to us, obviously, and the peace and stability in that region is one of our highest priorities. But it's it's a fact that China is engaging in developing infrastructure and investment activity around the world.
So you're not worried?
No, not at all, because we have a very strong foreign policy white paper, and we're aware that China is more engaged in the Pacific. Chinese, as the Foreign Minister said yesterday, that Chinese vessels visited Vanuatu last year as part of a broader visit to the region. But I think we have to always rely on the facts, and the facts are that we've had the reassurances that a military base isn't being set up there.
Look, 1300 222 774. How do we keep your power bill down? How do we keep the lights on? How do we make sure we maintain our commitments to other countries to reduce our emissions? Are we paranoid about China? And I tell you what, I was very excited actually to see Mark Zuckerberg being questioned, the Facebook founder, because he answered a question that I get all the time, because it's the paranoid question that rings around the world. Facebook's listening to my conversations. I don't have the audio of that for you, but I can. Mark Zuckerberg says, I don't know how much that's worth, Facebook does not process your audio and tape you on your phone. You don't have to worry. They don't do that. They're just really good at predicting what sort of ads they want you to see. However, Facebook are in a whole lot of trouble for giving away information, for basically having a business model that relies on you giving them your information. There's a raft of inquiries here and overseas. Claire, is there anything we can do? Facebook seems to me like a classic example that both financially and technologically, it's too big for a country like Australia to really influence. So quite apart from trying to tax them a little bit, which I think let's leave that conversation for another day. Can we do anything? I mean, Facebook's a dominant part of people's lives. Can the Australian Parliament do anything to change the way Facebook operates?
Well, that's a really good question. We're probably a bit limited because Facebook's not based in Australia. I think that's the point you're trying to make. But I definitely don't think we're doing all we can right now. And as is so often the case with technological advancements, we have flurries of innovation, and then the policymakers are always a few steps behind. And I think that's where we are right now. I look at Facebook and see a company that's almost become the victim of its own success. It's made itself so indispensable to our lives, and we are so connected to it that it's actually taking on a whole lot of functions that I don't think Mark Zuckerberg ever thought it would.
That's the point. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't know that he controls it. You know what I mean? Like it sprawls out and produces so much that they themselves did not predict. So how do we keep up?
Yeah. Well, that's a fair point, but I think the public pressure that's been put on Facebook by politicians and others is having a huge impact. I mean, look at how responsive they are now to fake news, and Facebook has found a solution to that problem because they were told that they'd better get it together. And I think there's lots of other areas where we just need to take a tougher stance and tell Facebook to sort it out. And the privacy and data stuff is super important because lots of your listeners will be, around my age. I'm 37. I've been on Facebook now for more than a decade. Facebook knows everything about me. Are you
still on Facebook?
I'm still on Facebook, and this is the problem, Raf. It's something in economics we call network effects. Once all my friends are on Facebook, it's almost like I lose the freedom of choice to get off Facebook because I can't take all my friends with me. So they have got extraordinary power economically, but also over our democracy and giving people news, and I don't think we're regulating them as well as we could be.
Are you on Facebook, Julia?
Absolutely.
Right, can't stay off it.
Sorry?
Well, you probably need to be on it for politics.
Oh,
as well,
yeah. You cannot be a politician
You can't be a politician and not on Facebook.
Can we do anything to make them work differently?
Well, look, I think it's unequivocal that they've clearly crossed the line here in relation to what community expectations are, and that people have a right to protect their information. I think that what this does highlight, though, Raf, is that to organisations, not just to individuals, but indeed to organisations, the value of good privacy principles. And in fact, I was in the world of business when the national privacy principles were introduced, and that really consolidates and articulates to people how important privacy is.
Do you think Facebook care?
I think that where they're at right now, they're in a world of pain right now because they're managing effectively a crisis. They've been caught out in terms of them having crossed the line here. And in terms of there's always more scope, I think, to do because it's a growing beast, if you like. But I think what we have done is what we've done in relation to our consumer protection laws and data protection laws, the consumer's right, or the Australian consumer's right, to know that their data is protected. And we have introduced those legislative reforms, which there's always more scope to do
that's
more.
Happening? I'm genuinely serious. I mean, I don't know. They seem to ignore a whole raft of American legislation. Why would they pay any heed to ours?
Well, our focus is obviously on Australia, and it's really, we have our privacy commissioner, and that will add to the investigation as well from an Australian perspective. But that investigation that's been done by the Privacy Commission is harnessed by our reforms and our laws. But
so
it
you're
is
saying
a
what's going on
feast.
now is as the result of the laws you've introduced?
The investigation.
We hope so.
Yeah.
We hope
yeah,
so.
Yeah, absolutely.
John is in Ringwood. John, what did you want to say about China?
Oh, look, I know Julia Banks has to be diplomatic and say that she's not worried about China and the developments, or alleged developments in Vanuatu, but I can't imagine that anyone shouldn't be worried. At first, it's the South China Seas, and it's a huge investment in the Philippines. Duterte was initially, talking, like the big strong man of the Philippines was originally, standing up to China, and then of course they've just been bankrolled and given up.
So you're worried, John?
I certainly am. In 50 years' time, look, in 1959 it was Tibet, and now it's Taiwan. In 50 years' time, there's probably a better 50% chance that the Philippines will be a part of China.
Well, look, I don't believe you're a part, but they're certainly moving closer to them. I might ask you just both a non-political question in many ways. There are tons of Chinese people in Australia. We have overseas students. We've had people of Chinese origin for, I think it goes back to just before the gold rush. Are we handling that okay, Claire?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a major asset in managing. When John's saying, we're not being frank about it, I don't agree with that. The dynamics of the region are changing, and you cannot dispute that. I don't think surely Julia would not even dispute that. Closer engagement with China is really important to managing this. We have to learn and understand each other's cultures and progress the relationship beyond what it has been, I think, a little bit too much focused on the economic and the trade stuff. We need to get much closer in terms of the cultural sharing and overcoming some of those barriers, because what we don't want to happen is a situation where we just can't have a friendly conversation about what's going on. And I think, the people who are Chinese and living in Australia are one of our best assets here.
Well, absolutely.
Just
I
briefly,
mean,
Julia,
China, you cannot imagine a modern Australia without the contribution that the Chinese have given to this country. But to Claire's point, it's not about being diplomatic, and it's about protecting Australia and Australia's interests, and that's why the Turnbull government have introduced the foreign interference laws and the multinational making sure that they pay their taxes. So we're very focused on Australia and on growth, but and the China Free Trade Agreement is a classic example of
don't open that can of
where
worms. We'll start having a debate
where
about
we
that.
want to grow and develop our relationship, but at the same time be cautious. Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Raf.
Great to chat, Raf. Thanks for having
Claire.
us.
Thanks for having us.
That is Julia Banks, the Liberal member for Chisholm, Claire O'Neill, the Labor member for Hotham. Claire is also the Shadow Minister for Justice. Let's get some